Welcome back to Redefine You, a conversation for well-being, where I have open and honest conversations with friends of mine in the industry to explore their ownership to self and mental well-being journey. As when one shares their vulnerability in such a way, we're encouraged to look within. I'm your host, Hayley Hasselhoff. I'm an actor, model, fashion and well-being editor, but most importantly, a body positive and mental health advocate. As when we start to live a life led of acceptance, we stop resisting to the lack of power in our self-growth. Redefine You is meant to inspire you to look within and guide you to lead a life being grounded in you. Okay, so today's episode, I get to speak to one of my good friends, one of the sweetest souls that I know. He's insightful, he's creative, he's brilliant. My guest today cannot be pinned down. He's a powerful, charismatic singer who has helped make Glee a smash hit. His peers said that he was one of the best dancers on the show. He started his own boy band called NLT. He released a solo album called Boy. He's a hilarious comedic actor with memorable appearances on Zoey 101 and The Office. And right now, he's starring in a new spinoff series of American Horror Stories. Versatile, memorable, powerful is an excellent combination, and Kevin McHale is all three. But most importantly, I am so proud to call him my friend and so humbled that he has chosen to be here with me today to talk about all the experiences that helped make him the wonderful human that he is today. Welcome, Kevin.
That was so nice.
Oh my God, I'm
I just
so
want to hear you speak all the time. You have the most soothing voice.
Oh my God, I love you. Thank you. I will do a lullaby anytime. Just let me know when.
Yeah, anytime I can't sleep, I'm just going to call you and like, just read me anything.
I will be your new calm. Don't you worry.
Oh, you're way better.
Oh, wow. Tips on me. Okay, we've known each other for a very long time. And we talk about this because it's coincidentally enough. We have been friends for a while through mutual friends. We've done, a fun little show together. Maybe doesn't need to be mentioned. We've also, just connected on a deeper and beautiful level this past year because I think the pandemic has brought us closer and really connecting with one another on how to check in with ourselves. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, if you were to check in with yourself right here, right now, what would Kevin find?
Ooh, I would find that I think Kevin has gotten off his ass a bit and is doing the things that he has been wanting to do. I think the past year has been obviously it's been rough for any number of reasons for everybody.
Yeah.
But coming into sort of a light at the end of the tunnel moment, I think I feel that, and I'm being social. I'm happy about being social. I thought like reemergence into society would be really, 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 really hard for me. And I'm I think I'm nailing it a little bit. And
Oh my God.
I think it's overall pretty positive right now.
Oh, well, I love this. I love that you're nailing your happiness and getting back into society when it can be quite daunting, to be honest.
Totally. And I'm shocking myself, but I think it's one of those things where after, being inside for a year, where I'm just, now that I feel safe, I'm pushing myself to do all the things, even if that's not being social, but even work things. I'm just sort of let Jesus take the wheel, if you will.
Opening yourself up to all the possibilities that surround you.
That's exactly what I'm doing, Hayley.
Yes, that is what you are doing. It brings me back to, you were one of the first guests that I had on Redefine You, the series that I started on my Insta Live when it was purely just a passion project. And it was the beginning of lockdown. So it felt only natural for us to now continue this conversation as one of my first hosts and guests on this series as a podcast.
Yes.
But let's start from the beginning, right? Okay, let's dive into who Kev is. You're born in Texas, but you've been living in LA for the past 16 plus years.
Yep.
For somebody who is making that big transition right now, which I just did, I went from London back to LA, and it was a big enough transition for myself. What was that transition like for you? Was that difficult? Do you feel like you still have that Texan soul inside you?
I mean, of course, the Texan is always there a bit. It comes out when I say certain words. My love of Southern food, it's still there.
Mm, mm,
But the transition for me wasn't too bad. It was hard because I was switching in the middle of high school, which
okay.
is daunting for anyone. And
Yeah.
so that was weird because I had grown up in the same city with the same group of people, even if I wasn't close to them. But you all, you go to elementary school, middle school, you start high school together. And all of a sudden, here I was, another part of the country. And I knew two people at the high school I was going to, which is why I even went. And, but besides that, so it was like, the normal weird high
Wait, you went to
school.
high school in LA?
Yeah.
I didn't even know this. Where'd you go?
I went to two different high schools. Is that right? Yes. I went to a Catholic school for 1 year.
Mm,
Wasn't my jam.
okay. Okay.
And then I lived up in Santa Clarita, so I went to high school up there afterwards and had a great time, made a lot of great friends. That's why I really started to feel like I fit in, and
Mm,
it was just nice. I felt I loved being in LA. I loved having access to doing the things that I loved to do and didn't miss Texas at all. All my siblings were grown up either in college. The other two were married and had kids. So they were doing their own thing. So it wasn't like we were all living together and breaking up the family.
did
And
you, why did you guys decide to move to LA? Was it your love of acting and that your family wanted you to pursue that in a bigger capacity? Or was it just that you guys all decided that LA was the next step for you?
a little of both. I had been coming
Okay.
out here to try acting a little bit, the good old pilot seasons and things like that that are
Back in the day. I
nightmare.
don't know if
And
January will ever be the same.
never. That's a good song title.
It
And
is. It is.
yeah, Taylor Swift song. I don't know if January will ever be the same. It was
Only
it was
told,
a
only
bit
told
of
by actors.
it's a niche song. Um, my family is all from everybody's from New England. My mom's
Yeah.
from New York. My dad's from Connecticut. So it wasn't like they were obsessed with the South, and an opportunity to change it up, go somewhere else was exciting to them as well. And so it wasn't as if we were moving to LA just for me, like, you're going to be a star and you're going to do this. It wasn't like that at all. It was sort of like, well, let's just move there because it'd be nice for everybody. And
Yeah.
you can do that if you want to. And if not, then, we'll have a life in Los Angeles. And so that also, it took the pressure off immediately of me feeling like, because I'm sure growing up around actor kids and all that, those parents who want their kids to succeed and need their kids to succeed for them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
those types of things that were, I would feel that when I would come out here for short bursts, the pressure of this responsibility I put on myself, like,
Mm.
oh, well, my mom's taking the time to be out here and I feel like I need to deliver, which is absurd because it's 14 and she never said anything about that. It was just me. So moving out here and being able to just have a life regardless of the entertainment stuff was really nice. And I loved it and clearly haven't gone back.
Were you the only person out of all of your siblings that wanted to pursue the entertainment world, or was anybody else a bit curious?
My sister, who's the oldest, I'm the youngest,
Okay.
she did try it. So I was 3, she was 19. She moved to LA to try it, the acting thing.
Three,
Yeah,
19. Oh, I
spread
love
out.
it.
It wasn't for her, turns out.
Okay. Okay.
But she loves the entertainment business. She worked for Jay Leno for a while, and then she became an agent back in
Oh,
Texas. She moved back to Texas to raise a family, and now she's an agent in New York. So she's still in it, and she was sort of the one guiding us to push us to do it.
so when do you think that you found sort of your understanding with the audition process getting into the whole groove? Because I was going to start with, obviously when you were 20, you booked Artie Adams on Glee, but was there a moment before then you started to feel like, actually, when I walk into these rooms, I need to walk in as the character and then maybe walk out as myself to disconnect the
Hmm.
anxiety of it?
I don't know if I've figured that out today.
Okay. Okay.
I
Well, we
hate
can,
auditioning with a fiery rage. I absolutely hate it.
it's a different beast. It's a
It's
different beast.
it's different than acting in a movie or on a show.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole different thing. And I just have terrible nerves. And
Yeah.
that does feel, it's sort of like, okay, I have maybe 5 minutes to go prove to them that I'm their guy. But there are a couple of things that help me going into auditions where if I remember, one, this isn't actually personal, to put the wall up to, I'm going to do me. I'm going to do how my interpretation of this part.
Yep.
But if they don't like that, that's fine. They have in their head who they want. And if I don't meet that, that's no reflection of you suck. Sometimes I do suck in there, but other times I don't. And so
simply, it's not about you. As simple as
not.
you can put it.
It's absolutely not. And the other thing is like they need somebody. And I think to remind myself that going in of why not be the person they need? They need to find somebody. So it may feel like you come in and they're just judging you, but they also want somebody. They want you to be the person. So those things, because it's so mental, those things just help me, talk myself off the ledge a bit.
I mean, hey, I could go on a whole rant about it. I mean, there's a whole psychoanalysis about just audition processing, and from the morning you wake up to the second you get in the car to the hallway in the room to then when you get into the room. I mean, it's a whole process of feeling in a full state of acceptance. And I would say that the audition process of accepting is what allowed me to then tap into my acceptance in my own personal life, because I started out acting at such a young age like you did. And I got taught that from my coach a long, long time ago, because I was 17 when I booked Huge. And then afterwards, I hadn't really auditioned. So I was walking in as Hayley too much. And I didn't recognize that I needed to walk in as the character and then walk out as Hayley. So there was that period of, when you go into the room, take away the job titles, look at the people and only focus in on the reader. I mean, it's a whole thing. But what I want to ask you is, obviously, because you were 20 years old when you did book Artie Adams on Glee, which was loved and adored by so many fans, and you brought such honesty and authenticity to this project. When you walked in the room, even for that audition, how were you feeling at that period? Because you just got out of high school. You're now living and breathing a high school experience, but you're living and breathing a high school experience as somebody who is paralyzed from the waist down in high school, which is a beautiful story to tell, but I'm sure held a lot of weight before you played that role.
Oh, definitely. I had never auditioned for a part with somebody in a wheelchair. I had many friends audition for parts of people in wheelchairs. And so I was, at the time too, there wasn't a lot of, for the audition, we combined characters. Sometimes like there's not enough, for the pilot, there wasn't enough material for Artie. So it was Artie plus a character that ended up getting cut from the pilot. And there wasn't really much of a character description. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, he's this. Oh, and he's in a wheelchair. And you're sort of left to like figure out why. How do I do this respectfully? I'm obviously not in a wheelchair. Like any part I play, I want to make sure that I'm doing it authentically, like you said.
Yeah.
And so I, 20-year-old self, like trying to figure out how do I go in there and make it look authentic and make it feel like I'm not being reductive and not, I just wanted to do a good, as you go into any audition, you want to do a good job. This had the extra component of a character that was in a wheelchair. And it was funny. The weird thing was, I obviously felt weird about that, to the extent of, is this okay? But they're having me go in, so it must be okay. And like when I went into the audition, I sat in the chair for the audition. I got up to sing, and it just happened so quickly, which was also really weird. It was a really weird, unique audition experience. And I then after getting it, it was sort of like, okay, now I really need to like focus about making the wheelchair aspect of it. Because it was almost like, when you audition, it was the competitiveness of, let me try to get this part. And then once you get it, the weight, the responsibilities on your shoulders of people might see this now. And now I told these people that I was their guy. And now I need to, figure it out. And so I did spend time, and I went to high school at the community college in Santa Clarita. And so I remember going to the high school and asking some of my teachers or guidance counselors for people they might know who were in wheelchairs, so I could talk to people to get their experience, just so I didn't feel like, I was going in, without any sort of frame of reference. And it absolutely felt like a responsibility, even at 20, immediately, to just make sure I was doing everything correctly. And I wasn't, turns out. I was getting measured for before season two, for a new chair. And the guy was in a chair who was coming to measure me. And he's like, by the way, I was watching how you were sitting and your legs aren't correct. And it was one of those things of like, oh, so for whatever reason, whatever information I was, digesting, that's how I thought I should sit. And like, maybe it was for that person I modeled it off of, but as a general experience, that was not correct. And so he told me, and I was like, great. And from then on out, I switched how I sat in the chair, because who am I to be like, no, Artie would sit like this. Like, well, no, this is your lived experience. And if you're telling me that that's not correct, there's a reason why you're speaking up to tell me something that you do not know. I'm the one now representing this on screen for millions of people every week. So let me be. I was always receptive, obviously, to any sort of critique or motivation to move in a different direction that was more authentic to life in a chair.
I think that, the greatest gift that we have as actors is to be able to bring art to embody life and to share stories and to be able to amplify the experiences of other people while also heightening our experiencing and diminishing some as well, right? And it seems like, from you being so young, just coming off of a high school experience, it's now that curiosity sense of, well, what was a high school experience like for somebody who was paralyzed? And how can I bring that authenticity to it with my own life experiences as well? So you did a beautiful job, and it's wonderful to hear that you had applauded yourself through season 2 and getting that critique and not putting yourself down for it, and instead being like, I'm exploring myself as this character and within his journey, and I'm willing and open to all that's receptive around me so that I can live the most authentic life in Artie's life wherever he may go. I do have a curiosity around this idea of, did it start to inflict on your perception of your self-image, playing somebody with a disability and then understanding how physical attributes play into our own personal perception of our life on a day-to-day basis outside of being offset, right? Because on set, you're playing Artie and you've got this sense of his relationship with his self-image with a disability. And then offset, you're playing, Kevin, who's getting back in his car and, going home, and where did your self-image relate there? Was there do you feel like there was a way of maybe a different understanding that you had with yourself growing into it? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here.
There was. It wasn't so much about the chair. It was more about confidence and perspective of, I am someone, or especially back then, was like just super self-deprecating, was quite shy, and could convince myself that like I don't know what I'm doing here. I mean, it still happens, but Artie was, regardless of him being in a chair or not, he was so confident and like self-assured, and he in all those ways. It was all the things that like I wish I was in high school. And I mean, he said some suspect things over 6 seasons that I do not agree with. However, his confidence of just like getting, like, I quit choir, I didn't do theater, I was too like nervous and weirded out to do that. And here was this kid who had, seemingly was getting bullied every day by the other kids, but didn't care and was sort of like doing his thing. And that was admirable. And I remember, or like you said, when you leave set and you get in your car and you go home, then you go back to Kevin, who's a little more unsure of himself. And then I get to go to work and play this character who did not care about what anybody thought or what anybody said, and would speak up for himself. And that was a very important lesson to learn for my personal life.
One of the things you said to me in the first Redefine You that we had was that you felt like the cast of women on set sort of helped you find your voice. And what I'm hearing from you now is not only did Artie help you find this sense of understanding with confidence and how that brings true in just a high school setting and just probably a relationship setting, but the people that were involved in your life and your journey in that period did as well. Is there a specific period that you felt like you started to recognize this shift within who
Mm.
you were?
I think other people did before I did.
Oh,
I got nicknamed
interesting.
like Kevin 2.0,
Oh, look at that.
and then there was Kevin 3.0 and 4.0.
Oh,
Um,
where are we now?
5.0.
Okay.
Yes, I think other people, because I was just sort of like a is wet noodle a phrase? I was just going with the flow, didn't really speak up for myself, didn't know how to.
Mm,
I felt nervous to do that. And I would see, the women on set doing that and sticking up for each other and sticking up for us. And it was absolutely formative. And that was like, just as the professional side of it was life changing, that was life changing because that was my college. Like, you go to college, you learn
yeah.
about yourself,
Yeah.
you grow up. And these are my college years, and fully learned about myself, learned to stick up for myself like they did, and like Artie would, more so than, because when you see it in real life and practicality, it's learning to say no to things like we've talked about, I think, and
Mm.
learning to, like, that's okay, and like, this isn't right for me, or actually let me advocate for myself in this situation, which I never would have done because I was too scared. I was always like, I got the job, so I'm just going to be quiet now and not say anything. But it doesn't just relate to that. You learn to do that, you can apply that to every aspect of your life. And so yes, I started speaking up for myself, and people were like, okay, Kevin 2.0, because he did not care. He was
But
letting
see,
people know.
here's the thing, the reason why I bring all this up is, you're so much more beyond your profession, right? But I bring this up because I do think that sometimes in the acting community, when you do start out at such a young age, it helps influence different things within our own self, right? It helps us start to think outside of ourselves of what we want and what encourages us in our surroundings, and how to then really amplify our needs and identify who we are as people, because we're having to then identify that through somebody else. When it comes to self-awareness, I do think that that's something that you're great at, and you talk about it so groundingly and openly about being involved in the LGBTQI plus community. And during a time, I think, when you came out, and I don't know this story, so I'd love for you to speak about it a little bit more if you're comfortable, but not a lot of people in the industry spoke about it all the time. And I think you were sort of a leading force into making people understand that the authenticity and being you is so important, professionally and personally. And if we can be able to showcase the differences between our career lives and our personal lives, that it's golden. It truthfully is, to be vulnerable in such an authentic way in both parts of our important paths.
Yeah, I mean, I I have a lot of mixed feelings about the coming out of it all, because
Yeah.
I think the biggest one is, like, I just wish I had done it sooner. I wish I was more cognitive of it. Like, during the early years of Glee, I was very much, I'm not doing that. I'll probably never do it. No one will ever know because it'll probably ruin my career.
Yeah.
And then I just stopped thinking about it. And I had a boyfriend at the time, like a long-term boyfriend. Everyone around me knew, my friends, my family, my castmates knew. And so I was living openly in my life. So I didn't consider, really, after those first like 2 seasons, the public ramifications of it, or
Mm.
why that might be significant, because I was someone who was like, why would people care? Why does this matter for people at all? Like,
Yeah.
one, it's none of their business. Two, like, who am I to think that me coming out is going to, like, change anything for anyone? Which is idiotic for a number of reasons, because I was also somebody who was obsessed with watching any coming out video I could find on YouTube. I loved them. I just loved watching them. And they helped me. I enjoyed them.
Yeah.
And these are people who were not on a TV show, who were just living wherever they lived and were posting on YouTube. And it was incredibly, um, it was reaffirming how I felt about myself. And I remember I had a friend come to me at some point. He's like, why don't you say something? He's like, there could be a kid in the middle of Idaho who may watch Glee, and Artie may be their favorite character, and they may see you say this, and it may help them. And again, my initial reaction was, no, like, why? No, that wouldn't happen. And then at some point, talking to another friend, we were like, the way I wish the world worked was that an actor or whoever it may be that you don't know is a part of the LGBTQ family. Can be on a red carpet somewhere or something, like, oh yes, this is my boyfriend.
Yeah.
And there's not a thing. And so that was sort of my intention. So then at some point I made like the subconscious decision that whenever this does happen, I'm not going to make a thing about it. It's just going to come out. And it did. Like, I made a joke on Twitter that I didn't even think would register. And then it became my big public coming out. So I'm happy that it did, because then it was sort of this weight lifted that I didn't know I was carrying.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a reminder for anybody, regardless of their circumstance or how known they may be or not. It not only does help other people, it helps yourself, because it's not just all of a sudden I've said this and then I'm 100%, my authentic self. That takes time to adjust. I've spent 20 something years not talking like this publicly. Then all of a sudden, here I am presenting my true self to everyone. And I think at that point too, I felt comfortable with, I don't think the world was changing. There's so many people who were coming out as gay, lesbian, trans, and it was really this beautiful blossoming. It felt like a rebellion against you higher ups can't tell us that we're not good enough for this job because of who we are. And I was lucky to benefit from that, where I was not a trailblazer by any means. I was absolutely following in the wake of
Kevin. No, I'm sorry. I can't even. My heart right now just can't even handle all this, because I have to say I'm so proud of you. And yes, you were a trailblazer. At the end of the day, what people don't realize is there is a lot of fear being in the public eye, doing what you love to do, and then also having to share a bit of your personal life and how it's going to be then reflected, and then having to deal with that afterwards. And I think for you to feel any sort of fearfulness or feel the need to have to give that sort of information out when that's not needed, right? You're allowed to just live authentically, and whatever happens. Like, you chose a life to be able to live in somebody else's shoes and tell a story on camera. You didn't necessarily chose a life to have to be able to tell every little detail of your personal life.
Right.
It brings me back to this whole purpose of, even the show here. It's all about the strength and vulnerability and speaking openly in the public about our struggles, because we have for so long been told not to, because it could inflict on us not getting the job or people not thinking that we're professional enough to get to where we want to be. And to be honest with you, I just want to say I'm so proud of you that you have gone through all of that. And at the end of the day, I'm also proud that you've identified and looked back at that experience and said, you know what? There were certain things that I didn't want to unfold in that specific manner, because I felt like I didn't have to necessarily write that story out for people to recognize, or to have to bring it into an article as like the main topic. But it is what it is. And I see that now I'm living my authentic truth, and I hope that somebody else can do the same. And I think you're just so beautiful in everything that you do, and just the man that you are. And it really does ring true to the fact of privacy in this industry, and a lot of times of feeling the pressure from public's point of view that you necessarily have to share everything and give an answer to everybody whenever they ask. And that's not always the case, and they shouldn't be condemned for it either, if you agree.
I think we, being like a millennial-ish, growing up, like, we still grew up when there was like the mystery of the quote unquote celebrity, of the musical artist or the actor, where you didn't know everything. And that was sort of the good part, where there was that intrigue surrounding somebody. Like when Lady Gaga first came out, it was like, who is this person? But she's sort of like a good indicator of how the times have changed, because she went from being this sort of unknown, mysterious person for a couple albums to being somebody who was so open, and with all of her personal struggles and mental health and physical struggles, where that is how everything has transitioned. And I do think Like you go on TikTok and there's my TikTok is just a bunch of like, 15 and
I love
16-year-olds like coming out as bisexual and all these things. It's like, this is great.
Yeah.
Because if I was a kid seeing this, that would have helped me so much being that
Mm,
young and having people being able to like have a dialogue about this and talk about it. My nieces and nephews being able to grow up seeing gay YouTubers who are their favorite YouTubers and like wanting merch from these people at Christmas is mind blowing. And that is so nice. So there's the two things. Like we come from the world where people intentionally withheld information because
yeah.
professionally you weren't supposed to give those things away.
Yeah.
And now it's gone to the extreme. So I do think like maybe there was a bit of a learning curve where we are sort of, or speaking for myself, like stuck in the old ways of like, well, you don't need to, I don't need to give that to you. But at the same time, maybe it's helpful for other people.
I think it's very helpful to be able to identify. And when I mean, just even from this little conversation that we've had today, it's beautiful to know like you've you've brought so much authenticity to so many things professionally and personally, and being able to have people identify and have people understand that normal is just being you. Normal is authenticity. Normal isn't a box that we all must live in. And I think that that is one of the most beautiful gifts that we can ever be given, and so forth. And I, like you said, I do think that TikTok and where our world is today is very different from where our world was. And so it's amazing to hear sort of the journey in which we had to get to this place of being able to even come onto something like this and talk openly about mental health or mental well-being. I wouldn't have been in this place either if you would have talked to me 5 years ago. I would have, kept my mouth shut and said, let's move on, next question.
There's nothing like a pandemic that really just evens out the playing. Yeah, puts things in perspective. Being like, okay, everyone, what really matters? And why are we not talking about those things? Because
exactly.
It is such a waste of time. We know life is short, life is fleeting. It's like, why are we not taking care of each other and making sure that other people know they can come to us to talk through these difficult things without any judgment? And you are obviously the picture. Also, for anybody listening, Hayley talks like this all on and off a podcast. She is just like if a safe space was a person, it's Hayley. You just want to, and it's probably hard for you because I imagine if you're surrounded by people who just like unload everything to you, who they just want, but it has energetically, I feel like that must be because maybe sometimes you're not always in the frame of mind or always receptive to that. It's like a big responsibility because you're absolutely somebody who people are like a moth to the flame. People must just go to you and tell everything about themselves.
Oh, I love you. I mean,
but you're so good. You're like the best person to talk to about it because you're so receptive and supportive and always have just a great positive spin on everything. And it's very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, but likewise to you. I mean, that's why I've been drawn to you since the second. We had the best gift in 2019 was that we were reunited, and it was a gift that was needed during that time. And I was thinking about that show actually earlier today, going like, I don't think that I even identified that I wasn't in a great mental health space during that period, and I think I wasn't in a place to put myself in a position where I didn't have a hold or control over where my emotions were going to take me. And I think that showed. And I wish that I was in a place where I could have even identified that with myself. And that's what it showed me this past year is like, be more vocal with even yourself in those periods of time to know that to validate that process, which as we all know, the industry brings anxieties. And the whole reason as to why I have these conversations is that we have had to combat our fear of the unknown as part of our professional lives and bring it into our personal lives and still show up and do the dang thing, without shame, without guilt, and without restriction. So let's jump in a little. So on your challenging days, which we all have, how do you show up for yourself? How does Kev show up for Kev?
Sometimes I don't know if he does. But I think
I'm saying I just said to you, thankfully I didn't show up for myself during that period. I was,
that was we could that's another show, but
that's another show.
That I also learned some things about myself during that time that I was shocked. Like I think, I mean, we can use that as an example because like I
Yeah.
did have some tough times, and I think when something starts where if you have anxiety or you have depression or you just wake up angry, like
Yeah.
sometimes you don't, a lot of times I think, at least for myself, like, you don't immediately recognize what's happening.
Mm.
You're doing certain actions, and maybe by the end of the day you're like, looking back at this day, this is, these all these small parts have added up to me being not myself. And like when we were working on that show, I
We'll leave it to your imagination, everyone.
I I was like riddled with anxiety and things, and I wasn't sleeping, which like has never happened to me ever in my life. And
Yeah.
I didn't know why. And then I felt it was like, I think the self-imposed shame of, because I had never really felt like that, of this is what's causing it, like this silly show that should just be fun. And am I doing it to myself? Is it other people around me? And so I think it's showing up is being able to have somebody else recognize what's going on, or you being able to step back and be like, okay, hold, like pause. What is happening to me?
Yeah.
And then what am I going to do to get myself out of this?
Mm.
And that may just be somebody help me. Like you look to the nearest person around you, like, I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss.
Yeah.
And usually the people closest to you are best at recognizing that and are best at helping you get out of whatever that rut is. I pride myself in having a really strong, intuitive and informative, intelligent group of friends around me who are very different. And like during Glee, when people recognize Kevin 2.0 coming out,
You love it.
it's like that. We're all super close where we can tell. Like my roommate came in the other day, he didn't say anything. I was like, you okay? He's like, and he just like walked off. We started laughing because you don't need to verbalize that, but that helps when you are going through something that you don't want to necessarily have to say that something is off or that you don't feel great. And being able to have people around you who can recognize that is just so helpful. And I think maybe me showing up for myself is me having people around me who can help me when I need it.
Yeah, but I think of that, right, and as a beautiful example in the sense of why this is so important to speak about our vulnerability with one another, and also in a public forum as well, to show that you can normalize the conversation, is because I wish that when I was doing that show, I could have came to you in a place without shame and gone like, hey, I'm about to have a panic attack going on the stage and I don't know how I feel about it, and I think that you probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think there probably was some sort of emotion that was being triggered somewhere outside of yourself in a surrounding that was making you feel riddled with anxiety and without sleep, right? And so it's then that thing of checking back in and going like, okay, I had that process. How do I become, Kevin 0.6 or whatever, in the sense of now knowing that if that trigger comes in, what do I do to combat it? Like
Right.
how can I identify it so that I know that I can take control of it, or at least walk alongside it without having that fear to it? Because I think when you have fear towards it, it gets bigger and it gets heavier, and you don't know how to control your own way of thinking if you're gonna be okay or you're gonna get through it. And then add on top of that, obviously, showing up yourself professionally. It's like a whole,
Right.
Then you're in a freaking spiral.
Yeah,
So,
because they absolutely obviously intersect and cross over. And it's like, if you're not taking care of one, then that's going to affect the other, and vice versa. And there's also something too where like doing what we do, where we're so lucky to have the opportunities that we have and to do what we do, and et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes that, for me, it's like embarrassing then. If like, okay, this like thing that I'm getting paid to do, I'm getting to do what I love, is somehow like messing with me mentally a bit. Like, who am I to like, what, like, it's the shame of the self-inflicted shame of like, well, this is silly. Like, I can't complain about this, but it's irrelevant because it's all usually indicative of a bigger issue. Like, this is just presenting this issue that you need to work through in this way. And it's also like everybody's circumstance is different. So it's then reminding yourself of, no, it doesn't matter why it's being caused or who is causing it. If it's happening, it's happening. Like, that's undeniable. It doesn't matter where or when. Yeah, exactly. And so that is also something that having to work through to be like, what, you deserve to be able to feel this way and then get through it. It's fine.
You all deserve no. I one of the worst things, and I'll just be real here, but I hate when people are like, they identify their pain towards somebody else's pain and go, well, I shouldn't feel this because that person feels this. And it goes, no, wait, hold on. Everybody's pain is validated in how they feel and when they're feeling it. And you should be able to appreciate yourself for even noticing the fact that you are going through something, validate it, be aware of it, and then figure out what's going to serve you in that moment. And if you don't have the answer, well, I'm telling you here, there are so many beautiful resources and communities that are waiting to hear from you to help you find that answer. And I think, one of the things you spoke to me so beautifully about, at the beginning of the pandemic was that you found that toolbox to meditate. You were cooking banana bread.
I never made you any banana bread. Well, I stopped shortly.
Banana bread, come on. You live with your partner Austin is like a shoe theft over here from the bakery house. I'm like, you guys are just amazing. But you found ways to hopefully combat this past year, and I want to tap into that. What was this year like for you, and how, because it seems like, even speaking about that experience that we had in 2019, you've grown so much to where you are today to actually take ownership of that validation when you are feeling something, and then learning how to be able to walk alongside it. And I'm curious to know what is that process, and what's the process been like for you this past year?
Well, I think we talked about this too before, where the good thing, or the sort of light within the pandemic time, was that everybody all over the world was going through, except New Zealand and Australia, because they really got their stuff handled. But the rest of us, were going through the same things together. And I just, like, the waves of what was happening. And I'm on Twitter a bunch. I could see it there. I could see it in the news, how people were feeling. It was this universal, like, trajectory we were on, where at first there was all the fear of what's happening. Then it's like, oh my God, I'm going to take care of myself, and I'm going to work out and meditate, or learn to bake banana bread, all those things that I've been putting off.
Or paint your nails, like I just saw on camera. Oh my God. Sorry. That was really sidetracked, but I just went, wow. And next level Kev. I'm so into it. Sorry, go on. I'm going to stop now.
Well, but all that is to say that the highs and lows were experienced together, and that is helpful, because there's nothing worse than feeling like you're isolated and alone. And that was already happening because we literally were isolated and alone. But to know that the feelings, and I know people who, this couple that lived in Montreal, like, they were having such a hard time mentally that they transplanted their entire family with their kids to Costa Rica, because they needed. So people were dying, surrounded by death, which was incomprehensible. And then you have people at home who are dealing with, maybe some people aren't good at being by themselves. Anyway, everybody has their thing. And as this went on longer and longer, the sort of funness of it all wore out really quickly. And it's like, okay, how long are we going to be in this? Because it doesn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel. And when we talked, it was in the beginning. And I was very much in that, I'm meditating, I'm going to bed early, I'm waking up early, like, taking care of myself felt great, having a great time. It's like, it turns out I like to be alone. So this is great. And then like the summer happened, or I was like, oh, we're going to be in this for a while. One of my best friends unexpectedly passed away. And that sort of triggered like this, like, oh, now we're just going to go down. And the thing is, I think that was the case for a lot of people, regardless. And and it was hard to, I probably didn't even recognize that, or how that was affecting me, until like November or December. And that was in the beginning of July. Obviously knew, like, upset, grieving, all the things that come with it. But it's that on top of the state of the world, where you're already in this weird mental place because, what is like 500,000 people in the US have died, and around the world there's dozens of millions of people, and you're just like politically, and there's Black Lives Matter happening, and it's like, what is going on? And I think from once George Floyd got killed, it was almost like this global reckoning. Like something snapped even more. Everything had already snapped. And then the world just, because we're not dealing with there was no superficial issues going on.
No.
Everything. Now we're talking about historical systemic racism, which is like, okay, I'm now having to relearn everything or learn the things I was never taught about who we are as a people in this country that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And that is like a whole, and then you have friends who aren't on the same page with you about that. And that is a weird thing. And so it was just like heavy thing after heavy thing. And these heavy things are good because they obviously bring up channels in which like things you need to work through. They're always educational things to get out of them. But at some point, I think when you don't have the ability to like go out and release that in any sort of way, it just compounds, and you're like, I don't know, it feels like you're floating out in space with nothing to grab onto. And so the rest of the year was rough, but it wasn't until I didn't say out loud until like November or December, like, oh, this is because Naya passed away. And I'm like, I don't think I've dealt with that. Even having the great group of close friends that I have, where it felt segmented, because like you can't even go see people, you can't even do those things, and then it immediately puts you in perspective of like, can you imagine having family members who died of COVID, who their sons or daughters or mothers or fathers or grandparents, like you couldn't see them in the hospital? And so it really, everything was reminding everybody of everything, because it all was connected. And it was just sort of the perspective of, oh, this is rough. Like, this is just tough. And it's tough for everyone, and that's okay. And that was the rest of the year, just unloading on you. But
and I thank you. And I thank you for being so open to sharing and to talking about your process, because I think at the end of the day, we've all had this world collectively remind us of the anxieties that we're surrounding together. And the beauty of it is that we, like you said, we're doing it together in the beginning. So we felt this unity of it's okay to not be okay. But then you add on top of that everyone's personal experiences with it, right? And then that gets layers and layers and layers and layers. And that's when you start to sometimes shut off and go within, when actually you need to be receptive and go outward, right? And you need to be able to open up your energy so that you are living and experiencing it, but at the same time not letting it take a hold of you where you're not able to process and let go and move on, but instead process and grow, right? It's a lot, and I can't imagine the experiences that you've been through, and I know that we've all been through them this past year. When it comes to like your emotions and such, what have you done? I mean, where do you think that realization did come from? November, December. I know that for myself, I've had great times in this pandemic of being like, I love that I'm able to speak about mental health because it's actually helping me and it's making me feel connected to people, even though we're so far away, and I just love it. And then I've had moments where I've had days, in bed, and I've had really challenging times of getting up and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And I've had to remind myself to be okay with knowing that the things that may have served me once, if they don't serve me now, don't judge yourself and don't think that you're in a worse space because those things aren't serving you. Do you get what I mean? Like, say, for instance, before you were like, meditation works, and now it's like, meditation's not working. Oh my God, meditation's not working. Now what do I do? It's like, well, hold on. It's okay to know that the toolbox actually needs to be a lot wider. And sometimes you're not going to have the answers, but maybe the answers are going to be sourced from an outsider's point of view of how to understand yourself in this period of time, because it's unfamiliar.
Exactly. I mean, the only way you learn to deal with the toughest situations is going through them. And like,
Yeah.
I don't wish that on anybody.
No.
But so it's like, if you don't have the answers, and like, luckily, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm glad I don't have the answers for this because I haven't gone through this.
Mm.
And there are people who have, and because they have the knowledge to be able to share with you to help you get through it and give some perspective on it. Because I think what you said is exactly right, where there's just not a one size fits all band-aid for all these things, where the meditation might have worked for this set of things, for example,
Mm.
but when you're dealing with this set of things over here on the other side, that's a completely different prescription, and you may not even know where to start to look for it. And so, and you only get, a solution by putting yourself out there and being vulnerable to other people who be like, oh, you know who you should talk to, or it's like, oh, actually, and you find out things about other people, like, well, actually, I experienced something similar, and you're like, what? And again, like, being in a pandemic and being isolated from people makes all of those things a bit harder. Um, because I think the longer we were cut off from the rest of the world, the easier it is to just stay in that bubble. Like in the beginning, I was FaceTiming everyone, talking to,
Yeah.
we did this.
Yeah.
And then as it gets on, you're like, okay, well, what's the point? Because like, we're just going to be here by ourselves. And today I'm just going to stay in bed all day. And that's going to be fine. Because what am I missing? I can't go do anything.
Mm.
And so it was the situational aspects of the past year didn't help probably anybody mentally, because the things that you need to help you a lot of times were not able to be accessed.
Do you think that your like mental health journey sort of developed over this past year into surprising yourself as well? And now it's going like, okay, there's a new aspect of my life that I now need to be aware of moving forward to see if something like that creeps back in. But I mean, I know that for myself, um, a lot of the days in which I've felt hopeless have been inflicted because of situational
Hmm.
uh energies that I have then gotten into my mind and overthought something and then, allowed that to take a hold as if that was my reality when in fact it isn't my reality. And it's like in those moments, like you said, speaking to people is really helpful. Like, you kind of need to have someone to be like, hold on, let's put things into perspective. But it's that first,
Mhm.
it's that first step forward to pick up that call to
Yeah.
have people go like, is this person going to understand? And that's where it's so beneficial to have friendships like this. Because even if me and you don't talk all the time, I do have a feeling that, if I was in a very deep place and I didn't have somebody to call, I knew that I could probably call you and say, this is what's
Likewise.
going on,
Yes. Yeah.
And I think not a lot of people have these sort of relationships. And it's like, so how do we shift the narrative, right? How do we start building those relationships with people that we want in our lives, but that we know that we can call on if we are feeling depressed or uh, we're feeling all different emotions,
Mhm.
we're
All the
feeling
emotions.
all the emotions and we just don't know how to navigate them. And we need somebody to tell us that it's okay. Um, how have you sort of reworked your relationships this past year to allow yourself to go deeper, to know that you have more people than just one person to call on
Right.
if those moments arise?
Um, I think it was because I'm someone probably like you who I'm always about everybody just be open, blunt, honest. There is no judgment. Like, you are not
Yeah.
in control of what you feel. So like, there's no judgment on, like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And why would I judge you for feeling how you like? Let's get it out in the open. Let's
Mm.
air it all out.
Yeah.
But here I was not doing that. And I think that's so hard to recognize. It felt hypocritical in a sense, but I didn't care because I was just down. I was probably experiencing some form of depression, which I've never had in my life. And I think, like, I was having a conversation with Austin one day, and he was just like, it's like, I just don't know what's up with you. Like, you seem unmotivated. You seem blah, blah, blah. And it's like one of those things where I had in the back of my mind, I knew however I was appearing to friends or to people, all of it was based off of basically state of the world and Naya passing away.
Yeah.
And if those things are always there, like of course they're going to be to an extent, well, because it's so recent,
Mhm.
but like, what am I doing to help myself through that? Because
Yeah.
I wasn't. And he was him being able to say like, this is how you're coming off was surprising, because that's not
Mhm.
how I'm thinking. Like, I know
Mhm.
I'm unmotivated, but I'm not thinking about it in the terms of, oh, I'm so unmotivated to do things. In my head, I'm like, I don't want to do things because, like, what's real in the world? Yeah, like the
Mhm.
perspective
Mhm.
shift of reality versus like this stuff over here doesn't matter. And
Right, right.
this looks like I'm coming off as unmotivated, which I was. And I was like, yeah, I am unmotivated. Like, one of my
Mhm.
best friends passed away, and I'm still working through that. I haven't been able to like see her family. I haven't been able to like do these. I've been able to see some of my like Glee friends, which has been great. We're all super, super close. So that's super helpful. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? Y- You don't you don't know how to handle this. I mean, the other thing is like, yeah, we've unfortunately been through this a couple times, but every time is very, very different. And this time was even extra special different,
Yeah.
because it's when you have a world full of people dying from a pandemic, and then like this unexpected,
Yeah.
seriously crazily unexpected tragedy happens,
Mm.
that's hard under the most normal of circumstances. And
Mm.
so I just think being able to voice that, it was one of those like late night kitchen conversations,
I hope a
and
cookie was involved.
yeah, probably. And I think he was probably just like, what the fuck is going on? I don't know if I can cuss. Sorry.
No, you can cuss. Don't worry.
Okay, great. Yeah, he's like, what the fuck is going on? Because it probably looked like it was coming off like I was being rude to him, or like not being as affectionate to him. I was just like, I am in a rut.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I was working on a project with one of my friends, and we had to write all this music and stuff in the fall. And I knew I had exactly 0% motivation to do it. Now I knew
Yeah.
I should be doing it. And so in my head, I was like, I'm just going to show up. Like, I'm just physically going to show up. And if I have the motivation to do, and that was my way of sort of pushing myself, to get out of bed, to do something else. And I don't know if that was helpful, because it's not like the people I was with couldn't feel that, I'm sure. But it's one of those things where, like, okay, am I going to regret more not getting back on the horse of doing, living every day, like your daily life stuff that you have to do?
Mm.
Because it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? It's like, well, I didn't do
Yeah.
this. And then am I going to make myself feel bad about that later? Like, you didn't even do that. And so it's that, and this is all of these things are new to me.
Yeah.
Like, when Corey from Glee passed away, it was entirely different, where we were all together. We could sort of grieve together,
Mm.
bawl on each other's shoulders, go to each other's houses. It was a lot of that. This was, we met up a couple times, like outside, socially distanced sort of things, or in smaller groups. And it was nice because we'd all just get together and sit in a circle and talk. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I just think like the circumstances in which, sorry to keep talking about this, but it
No,
was,
no, please. I think what I'm hearing from you as well is and I wanted to bring this light because I've always stuck it with me from our first conversation, but it's you said before that the pandemic was going to be stages of grief, right? So then add the stages of grief of just the pandemic and then the grief of losing a friend and put those two together. I mean, that's a hefty ask,
yeah. And
right?
it felt
So
like that. It did feel
yeah.
like I don't have the tools to work through this,
And
because
sometimes it can be scary. It can be
yeah,
scary when you don't feel like you have the tools because you've had the tools before, per se, right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
now you're, yeah, different situation, but had the
Mhm,
tools once upon. And
yeah,
now you're in a place where it's like, I don't have any of the tools and I don't know what tool to take me next. And, it and throw that the life circumstances that we all had as creative beings, we didn't have the opportunity to go on to set and express it through, showing our emotions through another outlet. You were kind of conformed in a place where you had to probably create those opportunities, like you were saying, to be able to get that creative outlet that you needed to be able to feel like it was being poured out in a way that felt authentic and familiar and understanding to you. But the beauty of what you have said is that you did go to, your friends, and you did say, this is what I'm feeling. And they help sort of navigate you to go, okay, this looks similar to what I'm feeling. And when you feel that way, and when you start to validate it with a word, or at least for myself, like social anxiety, I've never probably used that word since the past, 2 years, maybe. Right. But now that I have that terminology, I go, oh my God, it makes so much sense. That's what I had when I was 14, 15. And it starts to like take that weight off of your shoulders, and you go like, oh, it's okay, girl. You just had social anxiety. Like, you're totally fine. But like before, when you couldn't put a word to it, you were like, pack on all the bricks on the back, baby, because I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going down. And but so, when you start to actually speak openly about identifying your feelings and putting them into something that maybe somebody else has experienced once before and they've survived it, you're like, hell yeah, I've got this shit on lock. So, I think
you need to write a children's book about social anxiety or depression and have a kid with a bunch of bricks on their back. Or it can be something else.
No one would ever get into construction. They think it would be dangerous.
That's such a good visual though. It's like, well, just load it all up. Let's go.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Well, I mean, you seem like you are in a great grounded place right now. I hate using the word like, oh, you're in the best place ever, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I feel the same way. I have it's moment by moment, but it seems like you're in a grounded, self-aware place, which is such a beautiful place to be. Like, even if there's emotions flowing in, flowing out, and moments to moments, like, as long as you know that I'm aware of what's to come, and I feel a little bit more freer to know that I've been through it, I'm figuring out my tools, I'll know where to go next. I think you're in a solid place.
Definitely feels better. And I think also it's those subconscious things of like, maybe the state of the world feeling a little better is helping those other things. Like when I've used this phrase like 5 times already.
Okay.
But when there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
It's okay. People get it. People get it.
The vaccines. Like when you know, like there's opportunity to, it's just when you're locked inside all the time, where as good as I was about reminding myself, it's fine, just let it happen. If today's going to be a rough day, then just let it be a rough day. But at some point, the monotony of that is really hard, because it's like, okay, when is there going to be a good day? And getting some good news, being able to connect with people, having people reintroduce themselves into society a bit really does, or for me, has helped. And even acknowledging like the social anxiety of like reintroducing yourself into society, that's fine. And I also think now, what I do feel is that everybody, and if you don't, then you got to work on it. Not you, but other people. But like going out, if somebody straight up says to me now, I feel like the filter has been cut off, which is great. Where I feel like it's been stripped of like, you know what? I actually don't feel like going out tonight to see you. But I would love that. Like,
no shame.
Yes.
No shame.
Because I think this past year, we've had to learn to open up. We've had to, for survival, we've had to learn to share, or even reading other people saying how they feel. Everybody is experiencing the same thing. And so now that we know that we've all felt these unfamiliar, or maybe they are familiar to you, feelings, some dark, some good. And now that we can all admit, like a lot of the times when I say I want to go out, I don't. and it feels good to cancel. Like those things, like now let's stick to our guns and actually mean what we say. And
Yeah.
so if it's just like, you know what, no, or I actually feel like I need to go see this person today, or I just want to stand and watch a movie by myself, no matter what it is,
You have every right.
say it. And if somebody doesn't respect that, then that has nothing to do with you.
Move along.
Bye-bye. Because we only got, the time is limited we have, and you should be doing exactly what you want to be doing, how you want to do it. And that's, I think that's what I've taken away.
And I think that's authenticity. I think that's true, pure authenticity in all aspects of your life and relationships as well, which is an important thing. All right. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. So we're gonna just do some simple little questions at the end that I asked every person on the episode about what makes them them. We talked a lot about personalized toolboxes. I want to know, what was the last thing you used from your toolbox when you had a flare up or a challenging moment?
Ooh. Last thing I used for my sometimes it's gonna sound really lame.
No, I love it.
I don't know if this is a toolbox.
Everybody's toolbox can be theirs. It's personalized.
But sometimes you just need to like the other day, I just like blasted music and just like danced around the house.
Amazing.
And every now and then I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna sit in silence and watch something mindless.
Yeah.
And like allowing my brain to shut off in that way, like for a day or an afternoon, and not make yourself feel bad about it.
The guilt
can be so helpful to me, at least, where it's like everything's overwhelming. This is happening and this is happening, this is happening. And I'm just gonna, let's just belt this song out real quick till I'm hoarse. I'm gonna sing incorrectly on purpose. And then I'm gonna watch some anime and I'm gonna feel good tomorrow. Because I gave myself a break. It's learning to like press pause on your brain for a bit.
Hey, for people like ourselves, sometimes that can be the hardest thing to do, is just to check out completely in a holistic approach.
It's hard. It's hard to check out. And I sometimes have to force myself. I'm really like, I was sitting on the couch and Austin's like, he calls me, he's like, what did you do today? It's like, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I feel great. Tomorrow I'll be back on it. But today, nothing. Nada. Don't come over. I am not getting off this couch.
I love it so much. Okay. If you could sum up your mental well-being journey in one word, what would that be? Towards it, for it, in it, whatever.
My journey, in one word. Sorry, I'm not good at this. There's
no right or wrong.
I would just say progressing.
Awesome.
Progress.
Awesome. I love it. The visual comes straight to my face. It's like I'm in a computer. Okay. Lastly, we've done this once before, but we'll do it again. What are the 3 biggest lessons you've learned in your life? Words, feelings, saying, stories, whatever comes authentically to your beautiful noggin.
Be kind to yourself. It's a big one. Yeah. Like, just be easy on yourself.
Harder than...
It's hard. When you need to be, that's when it's the hardest.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself. Be kind to older people.
Oh.
Elderly people. Be kind to hear their stories, you know? And also, like, it's okay to say no.
Boundaries at the best.
It's okay to say no.
It's okay to say no. Well, I just want to say yes to you. Say thank you. Thank you so much for your vulnerability, your insight, for sharing, for always being so open to just, I mean, if any, I don't think anybody knows, like Kevin has gone along with all of my craziness over the past year of coming up with different ways to get our voices out there vulnerably and helping people understand that it's okay to not be okay. You have gone along with everything. And I just, as a friend and as a confidant, it's just so beautiful to see somebody else that's so willing to say, like, it's okay to feel these emotions and let's feel them together.
I'm
And
glad you're doing this, but I'm just thankful you're creating this for people to hear, because it's such a waste of time to not be open,
yeah,
because
yeah,
you can, we help. And I'm it's hard to do that all the time, but like the
yeah.
sooner we can break down those walls to speak openly to your family or friends, whoever you may trust, someone you don't know, maybe someone on the internet, the sooner we will all be a more empathetic and understanding and healthier community.
I completely agree. And I want to continue the conversation with you always. And I just adore you dearly. But if anybody that doesn't already follow you wants to be able to reach out and to look into all the greatness that you're doing, not only professionally, but most importantly, personally, go to his Instagram, which is at Kevin McHale. His Twitter is Druid Dude, Druid Dude. And then TikTok is at Mr. Kevin McHale. Thank you so much, honey, for everything.
You're the best. Thank you for having me.
You are the best. If you are looking to continue the conversation around living an unapologetic, authentic lifestyle, then this should be the podcast for you. Our goal is to build a community in which you feel empowered to celebrate you by hearing inspiring stories of ownership to self, and to always remember to lead with the 3 M's. That's mindfulness, movement, and mental engagement. You have got this, and we're here to support you along the way. So be sure to subscribe, download, so you don't miss an episode. And remember that it's okay to not be okay in your journey to becoming grounded in the power of you. Now, some of the topics we discussed today may have been a bit triggering. So if you are in need to speak to a crisis counselor, please text home to 741-741 or head over to activeminds.org/MH resources for curated resources ready to hear from you.